The importance of prayer. How important is prayer? Something that I've recently been learning about myself, specifically in Father Ripley, Father Ripley's book in This is the Faith. And, in that book, he pretty much says, and it makes you reflect. He said, prayer is just as necessary for our spiritual life as breathing is necessary for our bodily life. I'll say that again. Prayer is just as necessary for our spiritual life as breathing is necessary for our bodily life. I think prayer is one of those things where, I'll speak for myself, can be overlooked. In our day-to-day lives, there's so many things that we do that maybe we don't think about dedicating time to doing. And it's not good, because Saint Alphonsus, he says here, pray and never give up praying. If you pray, you will certainly be saved. If you do not pray, you will certainly be lost. And he's not the only saint to bring up something related to prayer, and it's important. I'll go ahead and read that again, though. Pray and never give up praying. If you pray, you will certainly be saved. If you do not pray, you will certainly be lost. So it's probably a good idea to set at least 5 minutes to pray. Okay? Saint Teresa, another saint, says, provided you keep firm and persevere in the practice of prayer, you will get to heaven. That's probably where everybody wants to go, right? Heaven, you cannot beat that. And that's a whole nother topic. But, just goes to show how important prayer is. St. Augustine, okay, that's another saint. Prayer is the key of heaven. There goes pretty much 3 saints saying prayer will help us get to heaven. Okay? And even we can go to the Bible. Luke chapter 21, verse 36 says, be vigilant at all times and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man. Read that again. Be vigilant at all times and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man. When I read that, it reminds me, it goes back to the book of Francis Ripley, the book This is the Faith, where he talks about when we do not remember to pray in the morning, we're pretty much telling God we don't need him. And he also gives the analogy of how much we do depend on him. We pretty much depend on him as a handicapped person would depend on the caregiver to wash him, to get him out the car, to feed him. That handicapped person depends on that caretaker on that caregiver 1,000%, right? Pretty much. And in the same way, we rely on God. He gives us the breath of life. The fact that I'm able to speak right now and to breathe in and breathe out is a gift from God. The fact that I can walk around here, walk around, talk, all those little things that I think we don't think about, but there are things that were given to us. And again, that brings me back to the Bible where it says, I want to say it's Paul. He pretty much says, the Apostle Paul, he pretty much says, what do you have that was not given to you? I probably have it written down here. Okay, but he says something along those lines. What do we have that was not given to us? Everything we have is given to us. Nothing we have did we create ourselves. It may seem that way, but in the end, we realize it all goes back to God, right? He gave us the breath of life. You did not make yourself. I didn't make myself, okay? And so, I know we kind of jumped all over the place here, but back to the prayer, right? Prayer is important. If we want to make it to heaven, we need to pray. And in Matthew chapter 21, verse 22, it says, whatever you ask for in prayer with faith, you will receive. So not only does prayer, the saints are telling us that prayer gets us to heaven, but also we're seeing here in the Bible that prayer is something that will help us receive what we need in this life. Okay, it says here, whatever you ask for in prayer with faith, you will receive. Now, some people, and I'll speak for myself, maybe, there's certain things I've prayed for that hasn't been given to me, and maybe I'll, get frustrated that maybe I'm not being listened to. Father Ripley, in his book, This is the Faith, talks about this as well. And he pretty much says there are reasons. Okay, there are reasons this may happen. And we have to understand that our capacity to understand those reasons are limited. We are limited in capacity. Our brain is not limitless. So we won't be able to understand everything. Now, on the contrary, God's knowledge, God's wisdom is limitless. To put it into perspective, it would be like if our wisdom, our understanding of life is just a drop in an ocean of water, where that drop is our wisdom, our knowledge, our capability to understand, and that ocean that seems to be infinite, even that ocean is not infinite, but for the sake of this example, is God's ability to understand. His wisdom. How can we understand that? We're just a drop in the ocean. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so, and then he also talks about, but, specifically one reason could be he wants to teach us to be persistent, because he brings up stories in the Bible. For instance, the woman of the Canaanite woman of Tyre, I might be mispronouncing, But she is an example where she didn't give up praying, right? She kept praying. They told her, hey, the apostles were pretty much telling Jesus she needs to go away. She keeps calling for your name, but Jesus didn't answer her for a couple of times. So in that example, it's kind of like me when I'm praying and I'm not heard the first time. She wasn't heard the first time. She wasn't heard the second time. And then I think it was the third time that he then gives an answer to her that wasn't the answer she wanted. So maybe I got something that wasn't exactly what I wanted. And she remained humble and she persisted until God pretty much told her, hey, pretty much gave her what she wanted. And in her case, her problem was that her daughter was possessed in that moment, that God said, may it be granted to her what she wanted. In that moment, her daughter was healed. So, that was just one example that could help explain why our prayers aren't heard the first time. But again, going back to that example of the drop in the ocean of water, we won't always know the reason. But faith tells us that we will receive. We will receive. We need to be faithful like that Canaanite woman and not give up and persevere and keep going. So, prayer is one of those topics that I can probably keep talking about, but I hope that this video serves as a light to those that may need it. I didn't have anything planned. This was actually, when I was about to start the video, I had no idea where I was going to go with this, but hopefully this helps. And as always, all credit and glory be to God. And if this helped, stick around because more like these are coming.